Welcome to the All Eers podcast, powered by HD Media.
So obviously one of the big news pieces of news, I guess you could say, following yesterday's comments by Commissioner Yormark were the announcements about the Big 12 Monster Energy working in unison, $20 million with a partnership, that deal. Your thoughts on that, and how good do you think this is for the conference?
Well, I think we're in an environment where revenue is really important because the expense line is growing exponentially. And so I think we've got to find ways on our campuses to grow revenue. And we've asked the conference to do that as well, and they've tried to find ways. And so I'm supportive conceptually of the idea. This will not be an additional patch on the uniform. The conference patch that exists on every uniform will just have the Monster Energy mark intertwined with it. So I know some people at home that likes to, for all traditions to never change, just so they know. And we are trying to find we are in conversations to have a sponsor patch for the one that we retain. But this is not an additional patch. The conference is replacing their patch, the XII traditional, with one that has Monster Energy's M logo intertwined in it.
So along the lines for the university itself, is that timeline, is that something where you want to get that done ahead of September 5th when the football team takes the field for the first time, or is it still just one of the things where when it gets done, and you move forward from there?
Yeah, I mean, our equipment guys would tell you they already want me to have it done. They're ordering all those uniforms. We would hope in a perfect world to have something completed sooner rather than later, but it's a big deal. It needs to be the right brand with the right values, and I think, for me, you don't want it's a big enough deal, you don't want to rush it. Mm-hmm. So we're working on options, but we want to make sure that we do it with the right partner, and it's the right opportunity.
What goes into it being a quote-unquote right partner? Is it something where you want it to be more connected to the state, the university, or is it something where just from a financial perspective that makes the most sense?
Yeah, I would say it's kind of all of, everything. The finances is a big part of it. You want to maximize the revenue opportunity if you're going to do that, but you want to make sure that it's a company that understands West Virginia values, that, hopefully has operations, employees, that kind of stuff in West Virginia. That doesn't mean that we wouldn't do it with somebody that doesn't, but that makes it better. And you want to make sure that it's a company that, isn't out there taking positions on issues that are different than the universities, or something the university wouldn't want to be aligned with. So the values is really important. So I think it's all of those things.
In regards to just continuing to build that financial umbrella and just to continue to help WVU remain relevant, how important is it just from that perspective, but also from naming rights and all that, just to continue to just be open-minded to what could be available compared to what's already been set in stone, especially with the Hope Coliseum?
Yeah, I mean, I can't emphasize this enough. People that want our teams to be competitive have to understand that on a daily basis, expense lines are growing, particularly around what it takes from a dollar investment standpoint to build a competitive roster. And so I go back to our basketball planned budget for talent acquisition on March 1st is vastly different than where it ended up. And so when that happens, that money has to come from somewhere. We've got to try to find revenue where we can. Yes, there's some element of that hits the fans when when you look at the price of tickets, or you look at the reseating, or whatever the case may be. But we're trying to find that revenue from other places too, so that the whole burden is not put on the fans or on the students in the case of our student athletic fee. And so you're really just trying to build and stack revenue blocks any way that you can to have a successful deal. And when you start with, there are 2 leagues out there whose conference distribution is almost 2x of yours, and so that puts you in a hole where and those schools are also doing a lot of things we're doing, but you really, if you want any chance to be competitive, you can't not do those things.
So in that sense, do you feel that you've become more of a GM and a salesperson than you have an athletic director, just from a day-to-day perspective, or how is that adopted, and how have you adapted to that, I should say?
Yeah. So, professional sports for the most part segregates the roles. You have usually a general manager, and they're more focused on building the team, personnel, hiring coaches, and then you have usually a president of business operations, and they're running the business side of things. In college athletics, you have one AD that does all of that, and they do it, in my case, for 17 sports. Some people have more. And so it's always been a complex job. I would say we're spending, as an AD, you're spending more and more time on the business side. And probably, if I'm being completely honest and candid, I get a little more enjoyment out of the team side, being around teams, seeing them being built, seeing cultures develop. But right now, the job requires a lot more time on the business side, and so that we're spending more time there, and we're hiring more personnel, using more outside services to help evaluate talent and that kind of stuff for kind of the general manager roles. Several of our sports have a general manager per se. Some of them don't, but they fulfill that function through other mechanisms. And so it is a very complex job that has changed a lot over the last 4 or 5 years.
In regards to the Hope Coliseum, your thoughts on that now that we've either approached or are getting close to the 1-year anniversary of that? And has it kind of been a little bit more frustrating, just in the sense of you probably haven't moved that needle with other venues?
No, we have had great conversations on some of our other venues. Again, that Hope conversation developed over certainly months and probably more like years. I think I had some early conversations with them about potential partnerships pretty early in my tenure. So that didn't come together overnight, and that's not something that I'm willing to rush. We really want to make sure we're getting the right value with the right partner if we're gonna marry our brand like in something like naming an iconic venue. And so, but I think the Hope Coliseum's been great. Hope's been a terrific partner and has more than fulfilled what's in the contract, has stepped up and done a variety of things to improve the facility, to invest in our programs in other ways. I'll give you an example. They invested in the water tower refurbishment, which was a pet project of President Benson's. He really wanted that water tower to stand out and look good and have the flying backlit WV on it. But Hope is one company. I mean, you look at Diversified Energy's been an unbelievable partner for us in a variety of ways. They've invested big in NIL, in sponsorship through Learfield and those opportunities. They were an early supporter of our stadium project, and so we're pretty excited about how the way that a lot of our partners have stepped up.
Shifting to football, obviously in the last couple of weeks we've seen the announcement of Pat White's number being retired. Kind of talk about that and how that all kind of transpired, because I know you guys kind of made a little bit of a tweak, but kind of go a little bit into that and the significance of that with him getting his number retired.
Yeah, I mean, well, first of all, Pat is such an incredible player and was a generational player for us, changed the game of college football, legitimately changed the game of college football. His success and Rich's success during that time with kind of the dual threat mobile quarterback, changed the way that offenses and defenses changed the trajectory of the schematics of what people wanted to do because they were so hard to cover. In our case, to retire a number, you had to have been a pro or college football Hall of Famer, which made some sense. You want that to be a very exclusive group. Pat probably should be a college football Hall of Famer, but College Football Hall of Fame has a criteria to have to be first-team All-American, and it just so happens that I think Pat's senior year, Tim Tebow was kind of the consensus first-team All-American, and so Pat has not been inducted into the College Football Hall of Fame. I think he should be. I think that's a criteria they should consider. But that kind of put it where, he wasn't eligible to have his number retired. There's a committee, it's the Athletic Council. They meet a couple times a year. They take the role very seriously. We've had multiple discussions over a 3 or 4 year period about Pat, but about the criteria, and ultimately they made the decision to edit the criteria. And I think the main change was if you led the nation in a prominent career statistical category, that would also trigger your ability to be considered. So Pat was obviously the all-time leading rusher from the quarterback position when he left, and so I believe that was a specific criteria because you're wanting to not open that up too wide, right? You want it to be an exclusive group, and then once there was a lot of debate around changing that criteria. Once they changed that criteria, there was very little debate about Pat. There was, in fact, there was excitement and joy from that committee that they got a chance to be a part of it, and so I give them a lot of credit. And they take it very seriously. They should. You're a caretaker of really history and tradition at the institution, but I don't think anybody was. It was never debated. Was Pat worthy? I think everybody always agreed that he is, and he's an incredible player. He's represented us. He's an incredible person, so he's represented the institution and the state extraordinarily well. He's humble, he's kind, he's considerate, he's generous, and so I can't wait to see him get that retired.
Could we now see different sports getting numbers retired now following this? Because you mentioned Pat, just a generational athlete that he is, but just I look at men's basketball, Deshaun Butler, Fritz Williams, who shifted the color barrier here at West Virginia. Then you look at women's basketball, Georgianne Wells, first ever woman to dunk a basketball, and women's basketball doesn't have a number retired. Is this kind of a new shift that we could see towards getting a few more numbers retired?
Yeah, I think that'd be a question for the committee, and I think now that criteria shifted, our sports information staff will make them aware of any additional people who would be eligible. But there was an intentionality to not make that too broad, right? It's like, invariably I'll get stopped and told X person, you can just about name the prominent person, should have a statue. I don't believe it should be my choice. I'm a caretaker of the people's program, but it's not my program. I'm here for a period of time. And so you should have, when it comes to honoring people, guidelines and guardrails and a rigorous approach. And we still do, though it just was slightly altered, and that might open up opportunities for other considerations, but it might not. I have to be honest, I've not went through comprehensively to look at, what additional folks, but I know that Michael Fergale and that group will, and they'll present that to our committee, and then our committee would make a decision on if they would want to do that or not.
Two national questions for you. I'll start with Commissioner Urimark's comments yesterday about the whole Brendan Sorsby thing. He kept mentioning educating these athletes from a sports betting and sports gambling perspective. What is West Virginia's take on that, and just continuing to educate these student athletes on sports gambling, sports betting, following what had happened to quarterback Brendan Sorsby?
Yeah, we're constantly talking to our staff and our coaches and our student athletes. We pay for so there's conference level monitoring. We pay for monitoring. We have educational sessions. The coaches do additional education. So we're aware of how much is growing and the pitfalls, not just for student athletes, for staff. I mean, like once or twice a year, I'll get some kind of report where a GA or somebody in our department has placed a bet that was illegal for them to place, and like we have to deal with that, right? And so you would be shocked to know how sophisticated the monitoring systems are, like unbelievable. And I'll give you an example that I use. I have a stock account where I buy some stocks, and I logged in one day, and that account had started allowing some predictive market stuff, which I would never do anyway, but it said due to what we have identified you as someone who works in a profession that makes you ineligible to place predictive marketing betting. Now, I've never put in there what I do for a living. That's not a question when I registered for my account, that it asked. But my point is, I have no idea how they knew that, but they did. And with geofencing, with the technology that exists, it is amazing how accurate they are at pinpointing that. And so we tell our student athletes all the time, like, there's not a mechanism where you can do this and it not catch up with you.
And then finally, talking about the Protect College Sports Act that has been a very hot topic on Capitol Hill. What are the conversations like amongst other Big 12 ADs, but also amongst your coaches here at West Virginia?
Yeah, I mean, listen, whether it's the 5-and-5 eligibility thing, the Saving College Sports Act, like, our coaches are hungry to have a system in place that they understand and we can work towards. I told somebody the other day, so the revenue sharing cap's a little over $20 million. People are saying, well, part of the reason you have all of this like redirect and above the cap money that's not really NIL money is because the cap's not enough. And I just said, like, hey, I could get on board with a cap that's double what the cap is, even though, like, we're going to struggle to get there for in the immediate future, as long as we have a system that I understand what the cap is. What's really frustrating is right now we're kind of back to where we were, where there is no cap, and you're just chasing magical numbers every day that you don't know what's real and what's not real, and it's changing, and and you have these agents who are telling you things that may or may not be true, but you have no way of knowing the truth. And so I just think whether it's the Saving College Sports Act, the SCORE Act before that, I desire to know what the rules of engagement are, and for there to be some kind of guidelines and guardrails. And I know our coaches do as well. It's very frustrating. You take the 5-and-5. It's very frustrating to having to be recruiting fill out a roster, and you have kids on your roster and kids who you potentially could recruit, and they might have a year, they may not have a year, you don't know, you could sue, that's frustrating for everybody. And so I think having some kind of system in place that everybody understands what the rules are is best for the long-term future and viability of college sports, best for the athletes.
You have been listening to the All Eers podcast, powered by HD Media.